Parkour and freerunning at its core is about moving and using your body to get from one place to another. And I think this can be done with different perspectives on movement, where you can either do it creatively or efficiently. But no matter what kind of things you're doing, if you're just using your body to move, it's kind of parkour. And it's a very broad sport where a lot of things could be considered parkour, and I think that's kind of the beauty of it.
Well, I think when people hear parkour, they think jumping off roofs, jumping on roofs, like playing with your life, basically. Whereas in reality, parkour is more about exploring your body's limitations. So eventually that could involve training at heights, but the reality is most of the training that we do day to day would be just jumping around, even on curbs or stairs, just basically being able to control your body at low heights, and then if you feel confident, you can take it up higher. But parkour is really about strength, consistency, control, and really just like having fun. So the reality is that it's not a bunch of daredevils jumping off roofs, adrenaline seeking. It's really about control. So I think the media goes two ways. It either skews people towards believing that parkour is like I said earlier, a bunch of daredevils who jump on roofs and basically take their lives for granted. It'll highlight stories of people dying, even if it's not related to parkour. Like a while back, a free runner who's a young guy, like under 18, in the UK named Nye died in a car accident, but the news highlighted it as a free running accident and saying that he died doing parkour and that it's like dangerous, but the reality is that that's not what happened. And the same thing goes in the other direction. So like I'm pretty sure everybody's seen The Office parkour, and you get it skewed in this direction where it's like this like nonsensical people just like touching things, and there's no sense of discipline to it, which obviously is not true either. It's somewhere in the middle, right? It's between us seeking this mastery and this experience at the same time. It's us working on discipline and strength. It's closer to a martial art than it is to skateboarding, for example.
One of the main appeals of parkour is it's really about freedom of expression, freedom of movement. It's taking these hegemonic constructs of what society tells us to do and just doing away with them, just using obstacles, doing whatever you want, expressing your creativity, and it just helps you feel free and more. It's a expression of art through movement. People think parkour is a really incredibly dangerous thing, but one of the main things that we emphasize is safety and progression. So generally, if I see a huge jump, I'm not just gonna just run up and do it. There's lots of progression up towards it. So I'll even, just to practice my jumps, I'll just find lines on the ground in a parking lot, just jump between those. That's a nice way to practice. Just jumping to curbs, smaller things, just progressing it up higher and higher each time, and knowing that if I can stick it perfectly here on the ground on a lower obstacle, then bringing it up to that height to doing something that looks more dangerous should be just exactly the same as doing on the ground. And that's what people don't really understand, is that they don't see all the hours of progression that you put into it. They don't see all the hard work and technique training that you do. All they see is the final product, and they judge you for that, just saying that oh, that's really dangerous. If I did that, I would get hurt. So most of parkour isn't really testing the limits of your strength. It's just about overcoming your fears and what scares you, and this is what makes parkour such a helpful tool and such a fun activity, confidence builder, is because you can translate this technique of seeing your goals, seeing what you want to do, progressing up to it, and eventually overcoming those fears. And you can just apply this to anything in your life, the same simple technique, and it just helps anyone who does parkour in just such a tremendous way. I don't know how I could get by without it. People's perception of parkour is usually either pretty positive or really negative. So we get people coming up and being like, "Oh, you're so cool," and that's really nice. But then you get those other people that are just mean towards you, really aggressive. Sometimes people will feel the need to kick us off spots, and security guards are often really they can be mean. Yeah. it's a little hurtful sometimes, but I guess it's just something that comes with it.
Yeah. So one of my favorite things about parkour is how inclusive it feels. So a good story is that when I first graduated high school, I went to Europe for the summer. And I'd already started doing parkour, so I tried to find somewhere to train. I go to this like famous spot that I've seen in videos before, and when I get there, there's only 2 other kids there, and they both only spoke German. But we like trained the whole time, and we had fun together, and it felt like it didn't feel like there was a language barrier at all, just because we were just like moving. And that's something that like really stuck with me, is that like parkour like kind of transcends these like barriers that we have in our heads. So it feels like no matter where I go to train, like we've been to Mexico or Texas, it doesn't really matter like who I'm training with or what they look like or what demographics or anything like that. It doesn't really matter. Everybody's just there to train, and it doesn't really matter what they're doing.
Although I think that there's an aspect of parkour that essentially at its core it's about trying to free yourself from the restrictions of your everyday life, from all the laws and things that keep you from being free. There's also the sense that you want to be mindful and respectful of your environment, so that you can keep training where you want to. And of course, we all have to live within society. There's no way we can just disregard all the rules and be totally free, but we try to do it our best within the constraints. And of course, I think nobody goes out doing parkour with the intention of destroying like the walls they want to train on. I mean, they want to preserve these environments so they can keep training on them for as long as they can.